The fire spoke in small snaps and whispers, throwing orange light against the Texas dark. A lone man sat with his spine to an old oak, elbows tucked in close, warming his hands around a dented coffee tin like it was the only honest heat left in the world. From a distance he looked like nothing at all, gray coat worn thin at the shoulders, hat brim pulled low, beard gone wild and unbothered. Just another drifter trying to vanish into the spaces where nobody asks a name and nobody remembers a face. That's why the bandits chose him. 5 of them slid through the mesquite like coyotes with boots, dry earth crunching under their soles. Their leader stepped first into the edge of the firelight, grinning wide enough to show tobacco-stained teeth. "Well now," he said, voice easy as a man who'd done this 100 times. "That's a mighty comfortable little camp you've built." The stranger didn't lift his head. Steam curled up from the coffee. The leader chuckled, nodded to his boys. "Room for 5 more, looks like." "We'll make room," one of them muttered, and metal began to speak, guns coming up, hammers cocking back, the dark suddenly full of little clicks that promised trouble. "Your horse," the leader said, "your coin and that coffee. Then maybe we let you walk out of here with your hide still attached." Still the stranger sat, still as stone, still as something that had already made peace with dying. "You deaf old man," the leader barked. At last the man lifted his head. Firelight caught his eyes, and whatever warmth the night held died right there. Those weren't a drifter's eyes. They were the eyes of a man who'd already been buried once, somewhere between Shiloh and Gettysburg, only his body forgot to stay in the ground. He looked at the leader like he was measuring distance, not danger. "You boys know what you're doing," the stranger said softly. The leader laughed, "Taking what we want." The stranger's voice stayed low, a whisper that carried like wind through a graveyard. "Then you should know something first. I spent 4 years putting men in the dirt from distances you can't imagine, targets so far away they never heard the shot that ended them." The leader's grin widened. "Big talk from a—" He never finished. The stranger's hand moved, so small a motion it looked like nothing. One breath later, the world had changed. 5 bodies hit the dirt in near unison like a single cruel chord struck hard. Then silence settled over the camp again, heavy, complete. The coffee tin never tipped, not a drop spilled. Some men come home from war. Others just drag the war back with them, carrying it like a wound that never closes, waiting for the day somebody gets foolish enough to poke it. Now hold on, if this tale's got its hooks in you, tap that like button. And if you're new to Outlaw Whisper Films, subscribe and ride with us. Drop your country in the comments too. I love knowing where these stories echo. And don't move, because the next part is where everything turns. Thomas Blackwood had been trying to die quietly for 3 long years. Not by bullet, not by rope, though he'd stared hard at both ideas in lonely moments. No, he'd been trying to die the slow way, fatting into the frontier like smoke into open sky. The places where a man could work a ranch without planting roots, where he could pass through a town without leaving a shadow, where silence didn't raise suspicion, only noise did. He drifted, he labored, he slept under stars that never offered comfort. But the war followed him anyway. It followed in the tremble that tried to steal into his hands when a branch snapped too loud, in the way his eyes counted exits without asking permission, in the dreams where boys in blue and gray fell like wheat under a scythe, and Thomas was always the blade. They'd called him a sharpshooter, the Union's finest. Whitworth rifle in hand, 300 confirmed kills. Probably twice that if you asked the dead. He stopped counting after Chancellorsville. Numbers started to feel like lies after a while, like a man could stack bodies into neat rows and call it duty. Tonight his fire was smaller than he wanted and dimmer than he needed, because big fires drew eyes. Same lesson he learned when Confederate artillery found Union camps by the glow of a careless flame. The coffee was bitter. Everything was bitter now. Then came the footsteps, 5 sets of them loud enough to wake a cemetery. Amateur work, boys playing predator. Thomas didn't reach for the Colt on his hip. He didn't need to. A Spencer repeating rifle rested across his lap under the blanket, 7 shots ready. And leaning against the oak, close enough to kiss, was the Sharps rifle for distances these thieves couldn't even understand. He hoped the war was finished with him. But he'd buried hope at Cold Harbor. The leader stepped into the light wearing a red bandana and the swagger of a man who'd robbed strangers and lived to brag about it. Scarred face, easy confidence, the kind that grows when nobody ever stands up to you. "Even in, traveler," the bandit said. Thomas sipped his coffee, even in. "Nice night," the leader went on, "shame to spend it alone." "I prefer it." The other 4 fanned out, 2 to the left, 2 to the right. Textbook ambush. The kind ex-soldiers tried when they wanted to feel smart again. They had no idea who they were surrounding. "Hear how this works," Red Bandana said. "You give us everything and we don't kill you. Simple transaction." Thomas set his coffee down slowly, like every motion was weighed on a scale. "I've got $17, he said. "Horse might fetch 60, take it, take both, then leave." Red Bandana grinned. "But there's a tax for travelin' through our territory. Everything you got, plus we'll decide what else." Thomas looked at each of them, reading them like weather. 2 on the left, brothers likely, same narrow eyes, same twitchy courage that breaks fast. Right side, 1 old drunk, slow and sloppy, 1 young fool too eager to prove he belonged. And their leader, confident, cruel, a man who'd crossed the line before and didn't even remember where it was. Thomas spoke again, quiet as a closing coffin. "Last chance, take the money, take the horse, live." Red Bandana laughed, lifting his gun. "Old man, you ain't in a posy." The blanket shifted. A single crack split the night. Red Bandana's laughter died in his throat, and so did everything else in him. He fell with a neat hole above his left eye, the kind of precision that comes from 1,000 battlefield mornings. The other 4 realized their mistake. 1 second too late. Thomas moved like water, smooth, inevitable. The Spencer rose, smoke curling from the barrel like a sigh. 2 sharp shots left side first. The brothers dropped before fingers found triggers. Center mass, double tap, Union doctrine drilled into bone. The drunk on the right fired wild, his bullet whining off into darkness. Thomas didn't even blink. He stood inside bombardments that made thunder sound like a child's tantrum. 1 shot clean. The drunk's gun slipped from his hand. Then the drunk followed it. Only the young one remained, barely 20, eyes blown wide, pistol half drawn like his body couldn't decide whether to fight or pray. Thomas kept the Spencer aimed, steady as sin. "How old are you, son?" The boy swallowed hard. "N19, sir." "You wanna see 20. The pistol hit the dirt. Hands went up, shaking like leaves in a cold wind. "What's your name?" Billy Carson." Thomas rose to his feet. Firelight painted him in shadow and flame. That gray coat hung on a frame that had once been strong, now only weathered. But his hands were steady when it mattered. "Billy Carson," Thomas said, voice flat as iron, "you're gonna do 3 things." Billy nodded too fast. "Yes, sir." "First, pick up your friend's guns." Billy flinched but obeyed, gathering weapons with trembling hands. "Second, throw 'em in the fire." Metal hissed as it hit the coals, orange sparks rising like angry insects. "Third, you run. And every time you ever think about robbing another man, you remember this night." Billy's head bobbed again. "Yes, sir, I'll run." He ran. And Thomas stood alone again with his ghosts and the smell of gunpowder, an old familiar perfume that felt more like home than any house ever had. Dawn found him digging. He could have left those bodies for coyotes. Part of him wanted to. But some habits from civilization still clung, even to a man who'd walked away from it. Shallow graves in hard Texas earth, stones for markers, no prayers, words were for men he'd known. These were only targets who chose wrong. Billy's tracks were easy to read, northeast toward Fort Worth, a trail a child could follow. Thomas didn't follow it. Either the boy learned, or he didn't. Not Thomas's concern. He broke camp like a soldier, methodical, clean, scattered the ashes, buried what could draw flies, left no sign but the graves, and even those would soften after the first good rain. His horse waited, a rangy gelding he'd never named because Thomas didn't name things anymore. Nomming meant attachment. Attachment meant pain. The animal didn't spook at gunfire. Warhorse maybe. They understood each other, two survivors of something that killed better men. So Thomas rode west. Always west. Toward country so empty a man could disappear into it like smoke into sky. But disappearing wasn't his fortune today. Near noon he found the wagons. Or what was left of them. 3 burned-out hulks, bodies scattered in the dirt like broken dolls. A family, man, woman, 3 children. The children were the worst. They always were. Thomas had seen massacres. Gettysburg was one long harvest of death. But this was different. This was cruelty with time to enjoy itself. The tracks were fresh and organized, professional killers, not hungry fools like last night. And those tracks led toward the one place Thomas swore he'd never step foot in again. Redemption, Texas. Population 83. He hadn't seen it in 4 years. He left for war a young man with purpose. He came back, whatever he was now. He'd planned to ride through without stopping, maybe glimpse his father's grave from a distance, keep moving. Plans change when you find butchered children. Redemption looked smaller than his memory. Packed dirt Main Street, a dozen buildings, a church steeple pointing at a heaven that didn't seem to care. Saloon still standing, brass rail still shining like it always did, general store, blacksmith. All of it familiar like a scar you forget, until someone presses it. Thomas stepped into the sheriff's office. Sheriff Wade Garrett was older, grayer, thinner, but his eyes stayed sharp, and they narrowed the moment Thomas crossed the threshold. "Lord have mercy," Garrett breathed. "Thomas Blackwood." "Heard you were dead at Shiloh," Garrett said. Someone said, "Close enough." Garrett studied him. The look wore leaves on a man. Thomas wore it like a second skin. "What brings you back?" Thomas didn't decorate it. "Found a family murdered 10 miles south. Wagons burned. Tracks lead here." The sheriff's jaw tightened. Reynolds' gang, 5 riders, mean as snakes and twice as fast, led by Jackson Reynolds. Thomas remembered. Jackson Reynolds, town bully. Coward who dodged conscription with a bribe and a crooked doctor's note. Cruel streak even back then. "He's worse now," Garrett said. "Killed 2 deputies, tried to bring him in. Town scared. Can't get help from the marshal. Territory's too big and too lawless." Thomas's face stayed cold. "Not my problem." But even as he said it, he saw those children again, and he felt the old truth settle in his bones. Some wars never actually end. "Tom," Garrett said, standing, "they're killing families, children." "I've seen children die," Thomas answered. "Thousands, blue and gray both. I didn't stop it then, can't stop it now." "This is different." "How?" Garrett's eyes hardened. "Because you're here, because you can." Thomas turned toward the door. "I came to tell you what I found. Now you know. Your father would be ashamed." The words hit like a fist to the gut. Thomas froze with his hand on the doorframe. Reverend John Blackwood, a man of peace, a man of forgiveness, the kind of father who wept when his son enlisted, The kind who died while Thomas was away putting bullets through men who probably had fathers too. My father's dead. And you're the best shot this territory's ever seen, Garrett pressed. Use it for something good. I used it for the Union, Thomas said, voice hollow. 300 men dead for that good. You know what it got me. He turned his face slightly, like even speaking hurt. Nothing, just ghosts, nightmares, and hands that shake when they're not holding a rifle. Then maybe this is your chance. For what? Garrett didn't blink. Redemption. Thomas let out a laugh that had no humor in it. Town's named wrong. Ain't no redemption for men like me. He stepped out, and screaming tore the air apart. A woman burst from the general store, dress ripped, face bloodied, running like the devil was behind her. 2 men followed, laughing. One had a knife. The other had a gun, aimed casual at her back like she was sport. Thomas's hand found his Colt before thought could catch up. Some reflexes run deeper than philosophy. The gunman saw Thomas first. Old man, walk away. This ain't your concern. The woman stumbled and fell, sobbing. The knifeman grabbed her hair, yanking her head back. Pretty thing, he sneered. Shame she had to scream about paying her bill. The street cleared fast. Redemption knew the Reynolds gang, knew to hide when they came. Sheriff Garrett stood in his doorway, hand hovering near his gun, outmatched 2-to-1 bad odds. Thomas stood still, measuring. 20 feet to the gunman. 15 to the knife. Woman between them. I said walk away, the gunman warned. Thomas didn't walk. He didn't argue. He drew. That Colt cleared leather like lightning, smooth, practiced, the kind of motion built by 10,000 drills and a lifetime of surviving. The gunman's eyes went wide, trying to swing his pistol around. Too slow. Bang! His shot went wild into the sky as he fell backward, Thomas's bullet buried in his heart. The knifeman lunged, shoving the woman aside. But Thomas had seen bayonet charges at Petersburg. Fast was a word that meant nothing to him. He sidestepped and brought the Colt down hard against the man's temple, bone meeting steel. The knifeman collapsed. Silence again. One dead. One unconscious. The woman cried, thanking him, saying words Thomas didn't even hear. His ears rang like church bells. They always rang after. Garrett approached, face grim. You just signed your death warrant, Tom. Reynolds will come for you now. Let him, Thomas said. He's got 3 men left. Thomas's voice sharpened. Wade, I lived through Antietam, Cold Harbor, the wilderness. I've faced charges that made hell look welcoming. He reloaded like he was back in camp before battle, slow, sure. If Jackson Reynolds wants me, he knows where I'll be. News traveled fast in a small town. By sunset, everybody knew. Thomas Blackwood was back, and one of Reynolds's men was dead in the street. War was coming to Redemption. Thomas took a room above the saloon corner on the 2nd floor. Windows on both streets, good lines of sight, good exits. He set the Sharp's rifle by the wall, the Spencer on the bed, the Colt close enough to grab in the dark. He checked cartridges, cleaned metal, laid everything out the way he'd done 1,000 nights before the killing started. The routine felt almost like comfort. Garrett knocked around 8. They'll come tomorrow. My deputy saw their camp north of town, Reynolds and the 3 left. Good. Tom, they're killers, armed, experienced. Thomas answered without pride, just a tired fact. I've killed more men than they've probably seen, at ranges they can't imagine, in conditions that would make them wet themselves. Garrett swallowed. War ain't the same as. Thomas looked up. War is exactly this. Men trying to kill each other. Only difference is who gives the orders and which flag you pretend matters. Garrett shook his head. You've changed. War changes everyone. Sometimes it kills you. Sometimes it hollows you out. Thomas returned to his rifle. Go home, Wade, lock your doors, keep folks inside. This'll be over quick. After Garrett left, Thomas sat in the dark and listened to the town breathe. He thought about the woman he'd saved, about the children in the burned wagons, about the children at Gettysburg who never got to grow old. Maybe some wars were worth fighting. Maybe redemption wasn't erasing the past. Maybe it was choosing, one shot at a time, who you were going to be. Dawn came cold and clean. Thomas was already awake. Sleep was for men without ghosts. He'd scouted in the night, marked angles, distances, escape routes. Church steeple was obvious, water tower too exposed, livery loft decent. He chose the general store roof. Low profile, multiple ways down, a clean view of Main Street. By first light he was set, sharps loaded, extra cartridges lined up, scope wiped clean, distances counted and memorized. 400 yards to the north road. 500 east. Wind out of the west, 5 miles an hour maybe. Every factor adjusted like the war never ended. They arrived at 7. 4 riders. Jackson Reynolds in the lead, bigger than Thomas remembered, meaner too. The other 3 spread wide, rifles across saddles, scanning like men who'd learned a few hard lessons. This wouldn't be easy. They stopped mid-street. Reynolds's voice carried through the morning quiet. Thomas Blackwood, you killed my man. I'm here to collect. Through the scope, crosshairs rested on Reynolds's chest. One squeeze, one bullet, leader drops, others scatter. But that wasn't war. That was murder. And Thomas had sworn, somewhere between Appomattox and this dusty roof, that he was done with murder. He'd only kill if they forced it. I'm giving you one chance, Blackwood, Reynolds shouted. Walk out and face us like a man, or we burn this town and everyone in it. Thomas's finger settled on the trigger. Justice and vengeance measured in ounces. He called down, voice calm. I'm here, Reynolds, let the town go. This is between us. 4 heads snapped up, rifles started to rise. Reynolds laughed. Hell of a perch you got there. Real smart, but you're one man, we're 4. The math ain't in your favor. Thomas didn't raise his voice. Math says I've got high ground, better range, and more experience than all of you combined. He kept the rifle steady. Math says you're already dead, you just haven't fallen yet. Reynolds's grin turned ugly. Big talk from a man who couldn't even save his own father. That one was aimed to hurt. Thomas's jaw tightened. My father died of fever, Reynolds. You die today of stupidity. Reynolds spat into the dirt. Spread out, he told his boys. Find the stairs, rush him together. He can't kill us all. Thomas had already done the math. 4 targets. 7 shots in the Spencer. Sharps for distance. Colt for close work. The numbers didn't scare him. One more chance, Thomas called. Ride out. Tell everyone Thomas Blackwood is done killing, that he let you live because mercy is harder than murder. Reynolds barked a laugh. Mercy, from the Union's angel of death. I followed orders then, Thomas answered. Now I'm giving you one last order of my own. Leave. Reynolds drew his pistol. Kill him. And Thomas Blackwood, who'd spent 3 years trying not to be a weapon, remembered exactly what he was made to do. They scattered. 2 toward the general store. 1 toward the saloon. Reynolds stayed mounted, firing wild, chewing holes in rooftops but finding no flesh. Thomas tracked the pair near the store first. Young, quick, dangerous. Bang! First man dropped mid-run, shot through the shoulder. Not lethal, deliberate. His partner dove behind a water trough. Good cover for a fool. But Thomas knew the difference between cover and concealment. Bang! The bullet punched through wood and water and found leg muscle. The man screamed, rolling out, clutching his thigh. The third made the saloon stairs. Thomas waited, let him commit. Boots pounded up. The man burst into view. Bang! Shoulder shot. He tumbled back down the stairs with a curse and a crash. That left Reynolds. Reynolds dismounted and hid behind his horse. Smart. Cruel. Cowardly. Using your horse as a shield, Thomas shouted. That the man you are. Reynolds yelled back, says the man on a roof. Thomas stood up fully, open, exposed. How about now? Reynolds fired 3 times. Thomas didn't flinch. All 3 went wide. Thomas returned 1 shot, clean taking Reynolds's gun hand. The pistol clattered into the dirt. Reynolds screamed, the sound ripping through the street. And then Sheriff Garrett emerged with deputies, men from nearby ranches too, armed and angry. They'd been waiting. Thomas's plan all along. The Reynolds gang was rounded up, bleeding, beaten, but alive. All 4 alive. Garrett stared at Thomas like he'd never seen him before. You shot to wound, every one of them. Yes. Why? Garrett asked. You could have killed them easy, cleaner. Thomas climbed down from the roof, each movement tired, like his bones carried more than weight. Because I'm tired of killing Wade, he said. Tired of